Welcome, 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 theatrics, to a new edition of the TD Pondcast with your host, the theatric Dyspraxic, presenting to you the best neurodivergent podcast that you are not watching. But if you are, I'm very happy to have you, and I hope that you enjoy today's episode. And if you would like, no pressure, but please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share if you'd like as well, as it would really help me out. And if you would like to be a guest on my podcast, you can follow me on Instagram at the Theatric Dyspraxic. Bringing in the new year, 2022. Wow, how did we get to this point? Today I shine a spotlight on my guest, Olga Mecking. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, a dyspraxic writer from Poland, currently residing in the Netherlands, not Neverland, where Peter Pan lives, but the Netherlands. She has written articles for the New York Times and the Washington Post and is the author of the book Niksen, that's Niksen, not to be confused with the former US president that self professed he is not a crook. And as she described it, it is a book about doing nothing and why it is good for us. Let's welcome Olga Mecking.
Hello, I'm so thrilled to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. Right off the bat, I want to ask you. You say your book, Niksen, is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, it is.
Niksen. You say it's about the art of doing nothing and why it's good for us. Can you tell me exactly what you mean by that?
Yes, so Niksen is actually a Dutch word that means doing nothing.
I can get
So
behind that.
yes, I'm a bit of a language geek, and I was really excited that the Dutch language had a word for something that in other languages would have taken many more words. Like in English, we say to do nothing, 3 words, or not to do anything, lots of words. And the
We usually
Dutch say
call it
niks.
laziness.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, well, yeah, it yeah, I have a bit of an issue with, laziness because we just like to call people lazy when they're, maybe they're overwhelmed or they're just resting. And
oh,
well, I've
absolutely.
read an art, yeah, so it's a bit, but sure, if you want to use it in a positive way, I'm up for that, definitely.
Well,
And
yeah, there's like, I guess you could use procrastination has less of a stigma to it. Although I guess you do make a good point that there really isn't a whole lot of words in English for that term that isn't kind of slightly demeaning. I guess this Dutch word Nixon is more of a positive way of looking at doing nothing, which there really is, there is a beauty in just doing nothing and enjoying yourself, but I will allow you to explain and elaborate what you mean further.
yes, it's pretty much exactly what you just said. So, the definition of doing nothing or of Nixon I'm using in the book is to do nothing. So that's the first part. And very often when we read emails or browse Facebook or do something that's not very important, and someone asks us, "Hey, what you doing?" and we say, "Oh, nothing." And for me, scrolling Facebook, it wouldn't be doing nothing. It's scrolling Facebook. And the second part of the definition is that it's without a purpose. So doing nothing without a purpose, because so often we think we need to get some kind of output of out of whatever we're doing. So for example, if we go for a walk, we have to reach 10,000, we have to do 10,000 steps. Or if we exercise or meditate or whatever, we have to do it for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of repetitions, and we always feel like we have to do better, faster, stronger, and
More
but Nixon
productive.
is more productive, exactly. And Nixon is a bit taking a stand against all that, so saying, no, I'm not doing anything right now, I'm doing nothing. And I'm not doing it because to get a certain outcome. I'm just doing it because, or because it feels nice, or for the sake, for the hell of it.
To
That's
just
with,
enjoy life and just being alive, you know,
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
like taking a step back and, because we do live our lives feeling like we always have to be doing something, we always have to stay busy, and if we're not staying busy with something, we're wasting our time. Um,
Exactly.
but it's not really wasting time because there really is no like nothing because even if you're doing nothing, I mean, you're still, you could be watching, you could be watching nature or something, that's doing something, but people would view it as doing nothing. But there's a beauty in that,
Exactly.
observing the world around you.
And I think for neurodivergent people like ourselves, I think we're just so much more exhausted by the end of the day, and I think we just need so many more breaks. And also, if you're dyspraxic, you're spending so much time. If you drop something, you need to bend and pick it up, and if you lost your way to your room, then you have to go back and find the place you're looking for. And we're just spending so much more time on those, kind of things, picking up stuff and reorienting yourself and dropping stuff, missing stuff, forgetting stuff. And it's just so much more exhausting. I
Oh yeah.
I think, yeah. So I didn't make that connection before, but I think it does help us also, if we're neurodivergent, because we're just so much more frustrated with stuff. I think the level of frustration we're dealing with when we're, losing stuff, missing stuff, dropping stuff, is just so much higher than for a neurotypical person. And it's
Yes.
just, then we just exhausted and we not, yeah. So it's really nice then to lie down and do nothing for a change.
Absolutely, and it's so imperative for people like us, for neurodivergent people who can't speak, neurodivergent people. Um, I've noticed this because I recently got a new job, and my job is very physically taxing. It's there's a lot of exertion involved, and I often find like I'm so glad that I get breaks and that I get an hour lunch because I need it. It isn't just like, oh, a nice little perk. It's like if I was doing all that I'm doing at work, without any of that, without being able to take a break and sit down and stuff, um, I would go crazy. I would, it would just be too much. And
Yeah.
other people, it may not be so much, but they take, being able to just do everything and having that stability and that constant, they take it for granted because people like us, it may not appear so on the outside, but we we work so much harder because we have to, just to maintain. And so I understand completely why it's so important, why this word is so meaningful to you, and why it's so poignant. And I'm gonna start using it now. It's like instead of saying I'm going on break, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go take a Nixon, and then be
Yeah,
like, what?
well, yeah,
What's that mean?
you can say Nixon break, or I'm just gonna do Nix. Yeah, it's kind of, it's very flexible. And I think, I was about to say something, and I had a thought, an idea, and now I'm got confused. But
Oh, I
let me
apologize.
continue.
That may be my fault.
No, not at all. Yes, I mentioned about working and being dyspraxic, and I think I was thinking about, how everyone is telling people to be more mindful and more in the moment, and I was thinking, you know, I have to be mindful of every single moment, because if I don't, stuff breaks. Like I can break a mug if I don't grab it properly.
You have to
I
be
can.
hyper aware of everything.
You have to be hyper aware of where I am, what I'm doing. Normal. Usually people just walk, and I go, okay, right foot up, right foot down, left foot. We have to break down every single movement into those tiny little mini movements, and being constantly hyper aware of your surrounding, of where you are, of where everyone else is, so you don't bump into them. It's exhausting.
It sure is. I mean, just doing what I do, I do online grocery, so there's a lot of moving around the store with these big carts, and just trying to navigate the store and trying to move these big carts through all these aisles and trying not to bump into people or run into people. it's just it takes so much mental energy and fortitude to just be able to maintain it. And for the average person, it would probably be, be annoying and difficult. But it's like you said, every movement, every turn, I have to. It's like you have to give your brain a push so it can give a push to, your nervous system to get everything in check and in order. And every time I have to grab an item off the shelf and open a bag, I have to like think about it every single time, whereas for most people it's just like a natural kind of, it's second nature, just like da 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 da. And that's why as dyspraxics, when we have like a job and stuff, we have to have repetition. It's not like, like for an autistic person, they may need repetition just because that's just they need that kind of routine. But for a dyspraxic, and everyone's different, obviously, but for a dyspraxic, it's like you do need that routine, but it's for different reasons. It's like you have to do it so that you can get into the rhythm of it, and so you can fall into that. But it's still each day, it's a challenge. And then of course, there's all the other sensory issues, which I don't know if every dyspraxic has sensory issues, but I certainly do, and that takes a big toll as well, and just adds to the stress of that environment.
Exactly. And Niksen is also important. We've mentioned about productivity and how we're always supposed to be working on ourselves and improving ourselves. And we're just working so hard already. Leave us alone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like a break isn't just a reason to just be lazy and to just do nothing, I mean, you need to do it because that's how you relax. That's how your brain kind of, first of all, it's how it processes things. I mean, you do need that moment to just step back. And it's kind of a good lesson to anybody, whether they're neurodivergent or not. Um, Sometimes you just need to take a breath, take a step, and just allow your mind to just rest. And you don't have to be doing something all the time, you know, just it's okay. It's okay to do nothing sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you apply that generally, like to your life, and what kind of inspired you to write a book about it? What are some of the themes that you talk about in your book about that particular subject?
Yeah, so the way the book happened is that I read an article in a Dutch magazine called Niksen is the New Mindfulness. And I noticed two things, how as I said, the Dutch had one word for something that would require so many more words in other languages. And second, um, there have been so many wellness trends from all over the world, and they're all mostly about self-improvement and becoming better at something, and always getting better and improving yourself. And I was just so tired of it. I thought, each time I read an article about a wellness trend, I go, yeah, now I have to do that too, right? I have to be mindful, and I have to also be, perfect at work and at home, and be the perfect mother and be the perfect wife and be the perfect writer and whatever. And I was just tired of it. And I wrote an article that got published in the New York Times called The Case for Doing Nothing. And to my big surprise, it went viral. It had 150,000 shares right at the beginning. And I wrote it in May 2019, I think. Yeah. And then by July, Niksen was everywhere. All the internet picked it up. Time magazine wrote about it. Women's magazines wrote about it. And that got me the attention of a publisher here in the Netherlands, and a book deal. And so that's like the origin story of the book. And some of the themes were, of course, so there are a few chapters in that book, and one is, of course, about the Netherlands and how the Dutch approach leisure time and work, because interestingly, the Dutch are a very entrepreneurial, productive nation, but they also have this concept of being normal. And that means, for example, if you work
Crazy
too hard,
concept.
they have a saying, if being normal is already crazy enough. And for example, if you work too many hours, they won't be, oh wow, you're so tough, you can work so hard. They're gonna be, what you doing? Are you stupid? Go home. So they're not gonna be very impressed by someone who works long hours or so they like keeping things, okay, I work my time and I work and I'm very effective when I work, but when it's time to go home, I go home and then I'm done with working. And there's lots of places for leisure, the beaches, the dunes, pretty amazing. And there's this big appreciation of leisure time. You get vacation time here when you work for a company. And so that's actually, and there's of course this great social support system here, which of course always helps. So which is why I believe the Netherlands can be a great place for Niksen, and why they even have that word, which and yeah, so then I go into the definition because I was so fascinated by this idea that there's work that's invisible that looks like doing nothing. And one work I was talking about is, for example, creative work. Creative work, of course, it looks like a painter painting, a dancer dancing, a writer writing, but it also looks like a person on the couch that from the outside perspective looks like they're doing nothing. But inside, the brains are working, and spinning, and coming up with new ideas and new music pieces or new articles or books or new paintings or stuff. So the same, my father is a scientist, and a lot of the work that he does is just sitting on the couch and writing his formulas, which doesn't look like much from the outside, but it's work. It's creative work, it's brain work.
Right. It's like a writer, a writer will spend a lot of the times they might be pacing or they might just be sitting down just staring at a wall, and it may look like, oh, they're not being very productive. But they're doing a lot of
Exactly.
mental work. And that's the thing. I think in our society, we always feel like we always have to be seen doing something. Um,
Yes.
and if we're not like, if we don't look on the outside, on the surface, like we're constantly busy, we just seem like, oh, we're just not productive people. But we might have a lot of things going on. We're brainstorming. I mean, that's what a lot of art is in the beginning, initially, is just brainstorming and just thinking about it, what you're going to paint, what you're going to write, and then actually eventually coming around to doing it if you have the executive function to do so.
Yeah, that's like the tip of the iceberg. Like all the work that is happening, it's just as important as the actual act of writing, painting, dancing, composing. It's just as it may be even more important because it lays the groundwork for the visible part of work, of creative work.
Exactly.
Because without that, that walking around, the looking on out of the window, the kind of going places and taking a shower. That's why we have the best ideas in the shower or while we're taking a bath, and not while we're staring at the computer and trying to come up with something. That's not how it works.
Right. You have to be kind of doing something else for inspiration to hit you. Like for me, I take a lot of walks, and that's
Yeah,
usually when I come up with a lot of my ideas is just by taking walks, you know. Of course,
exactly. Yeah.
sometimes I run into the issue of not having a way to write down my ideas. So I like have to try and remember it when then come home and see if how much of it I remember. But that's another issue.
Oh yeah, that's why I guess some people, they go around with like a recording device or their phone and just record when inspiration hits them when they're outside. They just record it on their phones or something. I didn't do that, but it might be helpful.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I need to do, but sometimes I just like you never know whenever you're gonna get an idea, you know. So you're just like
Exactly.
you just you know you take a walk and then it hits you and it's like a steam train. You're like, ah, I need a way to write it down. How come I didn't bring my phone with me? You know. Um,
Yeah. Although I found if an idea hits me, then it has enough kind of movement to get me going that I'm gonna remember it when I'm home,
exactly.
and I'm gonna, yeah.
You're
So
gonna
maybe
remember
that's
it.
a
If
good
it's
way
good.
to
If it's a good enough idea,
exactly.
you'll remember it.
Exactly. I think that's the way maybe to find out which ideas will stay and which ones won't.
Yeah, because if you forget it by the time you get home, then it's like, well, it may not be a good enough idea anyway.
Yeah, and the second type of invisible or work, that goes under the surface. And I was reading a lot about women and work, and how women do more of that invisible work of making sure that the house is running smoothly. So, you remember to buy toilet paper, you remember this, you remembered appointments, you remember all sorts of things that people may not notice because they're just all in your head, so people don't see that. But if you don't do that, nothing gets done. Your kids don't go to their doctor's appointments, and no one has anything to eat. So, and
Right, yeah. I
women.
mean, there's so much work just into maintaining those domestic duties that even though you may not be like a an official job position, it's still a lot of work just to maintain. I mean, I would struggle with it for sure. It would certainly be a job for me just to be able to
Oh, it is.
handle all that.
I do it, and it is really. And my husband is amazing, and he helps. Like, he does so much, and it's still hard. So yeah, and also for us as Praxis, we also talked about how we have to do all sorts of work that neurotypicals don't, like the way we, or at least I'm not sure if I can speak for everyone, probably not, but for me, the keeping score of who is where at which moment, and especially with kids who just whoosh whoosh whoosh, and they're suddenly someplace else, and you're just so confused because they're so fast.
Oh yeah, just trying to keep up with kids. I
And
mean, I'm not a parent myself, so I haven't. I mean, I've encountered that a little bit just from being around kids, but obviously it's not the same thing. But of course, you know, maybe someday if I have a parent, I'll probably really identify with that, relate to that. But I'm sure a lot of dyspraxics who are parents, they probably have to deal with the same thing, and I can only imagine how difficult it must be because kids are really fast and they're unpredictable and you never know, you know, where they are at a given time or what they're gonna do. So it's just like and being a dyspraxic, it's like you have to do what everyone else has to do, but you have to extra work to do as well. Like it's so much extra. You don't get to just like, you know, put it everything off on someone else. You have to do all the responsibilities of being an adult, being a parent, having a job, all that kind of stuff. Um, but it's just so much more of a challenge for you, and there's so much work that you have to put in just to
oh yeah,
maintain just the basic functions of living.
oh yeah, and for example, with kids, for example, how you have this newborn, and they can't do anything for themselves, and you struggle with things like buttons. And here you have this baby who cannot help themselves, and you need to change their diaper.
Oh yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna
The
deal with
amount
that.
of kind of hand movements that you have to do, and if the baby shifts a bit to the left and the right, you're totally lost because you've planned your movement differently, and now you have to redo it all over again. It's just, I'm just so shocked at how much work that is. Like, it sounds simple. Okay, you change the baby's diaper, or you kind of put on their pajamas. What's the big deal? But it's just so hard. Like, my kids are big now, so they're age 10 and 12. So they can obviously, dress themselves and stuff. So there's much less of that, and I find it much easier now. But when they were little, it was just so hard. Not just because kids are loud. They just are. It's how crying is how they communicate for a long time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's not just that. Just the changing diaper, the unbuttoning, the changing of pajama, clothing for your kid, all those little movements that you have to do, and it's just so hard.
And if you get used to like a certain movement, and then it's like whenever I have to turn my hands and do something or anything that requires a lot of dexterity in the fingers and everything like that, if I have to fold something, like that's always difficult for me because it always feels unnatural,
Yeah,
especially when it's something that's just it's like a different kind of you have to move differently and work with resistance, and it's always like why is my hands not like my brain can't comprehend what my hands are dealing with at that moment.
exactly. So I always get very, very annoyed when I go to the supermarket and buy the flour or the pasta or whatever it is I'm always buying, and they change the packaging. And I know how to open the old packaging because I've done it several times, and I have some muscle memory for that sort of package. But the new packaging is different, and I have to learn it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in like fast food and stuff, and like whenever you get used to like making certain kinds of it's that repetition, that muscle memory, as you say. Um, but then you get a new product, and it's like, oh crap, now I got to learn something new, and I have to go through the whole thing all over again. And it's like
Yeah,
I was just becoming capable at this job, and here you go throwing me a curveball.
yeah, it's definitely that. Yeah.
So, I want to ask you a bit more about your background as a dyspraxic, how you sort of came to understand that. But you actually had an article that you sent me, and you allowed me to read it. So,
Hmm?
if it's all right with you, I would like to read the article now, and then we can discuss some of the things you talk about and some other things as well about your experience as a dyspraxic, because it's always different for everybody, but there's always those similarities that we all can relate to. So I
Okay, fine.
go ahead and read it. It was published in Paste magazine on February 28th, 2017, and it's being an adult with dyspraxia. I like the little image you have. It's this girl laying on the ground with her hair over her face. You can see that in the description whenever it'll be in the description. But this is the article. It says, I've always been clumsy. As a child, I had poor muscle control and was much slower than the other children. During games, I did my best to avoid the ball instead of catching or kicking it, to the annoyance of my friends. As an adult, I'm still clumsy and have trouble making my way in the world. I keep on getting lost. My mom sometimes says, think carefully where you want to go, then go in the other direction. Sound advice, but whichever way I ended up going, it would still probably be the wrong one. All of these are symptoms of a condition called dyspraxia. The internationally recognized name is actually developmental coordination disorder, or DCD, but it's often used interchangeably with the term dyspraxia. Coordination problems lie at the heart of the condition, but because coordination is required in all areas of life, it affects daily living tasks, for example, brushing hair, cleaning teeth, buttoning, fine motor tasks, and gross motor tasks like kicking a ball, running, jumping, and balancing, explains Amanda Kirby, professor of developmental disorders at the University of South Wales. Even if sufferers don't have problems with these skills, they can still find other everyday tasks challenging. We need to concentrate fully on every single thing we're doing, or else something bad will happen. We'll cut a finger while preparing vegetables for dinner. We'll burn ourselves while trying to take the lasagna out of the oven, or walk out of the house with a few buttons open. I always tend to spill or drop stuff. Even if I'm paying attention, I'll still break a considerable number of plates. I notice mysterious cuts or scratches on my skin and have no idea how they happened. But don't many disorders have the same characteristics? It often overlaps with other learning difficulties like dyslexia, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, language and communication difficulties, or dyscalculia, says Kirby. Dyspraxia is a part of the neurodiversity movement, which includes people with autism, ADHD, and other learning difficulties. According to this view, neurological differences in humans are not diseases to be eradicated, but rather beautiful examples of human diversity. It is said that dyspraxia affects around 5 to 6% of the population in childhood, but the majority of these children continue to have considerable challenges in adulthood as well. But many disorders don't manifest in children the way they manifest in adults. The difference between being a child and an adult is that you can avoid some things. You don't have to play team games, you don't have to write, you can use a computer, you can choose the environment you're in to minimize your challenges. It's true, I only write by hand if I really have to. I'm happy to use any technology available to help get me started, and I avoid places that are too crowded or overly stimulating. Still, my challenges haven't dissipated. In fact, many of them have become even more pronounced. Let's take driving, for example. It combines skills I lack or have problems with, such as spatial orientation, quick reaction time, and the ability to process information from multiple sources. It's not that I'm unable to learn new skills, it would just take more time and effort than it would for someone without the condition. So I make do without a car. And then I deal with anxiety and exhaustion. Because when you're trying to juggle, you can find that you're getting more tired than others because you're trying to consciously do things, Kirby tells me. Another problem with people with dyspraxia have is keeping organized. I'm terribly chaotic. I can't plan more than a few days ahead. Agendas, spreadsheets, or calendars don't work for me because they don't seem to follow the way my brain ticks. I do my best, but still end up occasionally missing appointments and forgetting or misplacing things. It's even more difficult to live with dyspraxia for a parent. You often have to juggle lots of different all at once and things all at once and manage not only your time, but others' time as well, Kirby points out. That can't be difficult. That can be difficult and cause extra stress. The worst part of my condition is not just time management, clumsiness, or my inability to get around in the world, though. It's the silly comments I get sometimes, like, you should pay more attention. Outsiders believe that a task is easy for everyone, so if you just focused more, you'd be fine, Kirby says. Such comments are far from helpful. It's not just a simple case of clumsiness. My struggles are real. It's an internationally recognized condition, not something that you made up. It's not something rare and unusual. We know that it impacts education and employment, Kirby adds. There is no cure for dyspraxia, but there is a lot that can be done about it. First of all, getting help is of crucial importance. Raising awareness is too, because dyspraxia is not a readily recognized condition the way autism or ADHD are. While having dyspraxia may be frustrating, there is a silver lining to it. One of the things we find is that some of the people with dyspraxia are very empathetic and caring. And so these are really positive traits for being a parent, says Kirby. I find this very heartening, given that I often feel guilty for not being able to do the things that normal parents do with their children. When asked whether people with dyspraxia have special talents, Kirby replied, I think it's no good saying people with X are talented. After all, doesn't everybody have skills that are beneficial in any way? It's no different from other people. You hear that? In our differences, we're no different from other people. Very insightful article. I identify, of course, with a lot of that. The driving stuff, in particular. I don't drive as well. Some dyspraxics do. They are able to maintain doing that. I don't really know how. I guess, they are able to overcome some of the difficulties that come with that. And obviously, I'm not a parent, but I would imagine if I was, I would have a lot of the same kind of issues. And of course, over in America, it's the same way in the sense that stuff like dyslexia, ADHD, and autism are much more recognized and included. But stuff like dyspraxia, I mean, here in the United States, it's still virtually unknown. You know, nobody knows what it is. I've never met a person who did here. So I can understand all of that. Is
Yeah.
there anything you would like to elaborate on some of the things that you talked about in that article?
So I guess I pointed out the driving part, and I guess it's different because I guess in the US you drive automatic, right?
I guess so.
So we
Some
drive
people drive
stick.
stick, but I guess most people I guess would drive automatic.
So I
I don't
guess
have
for
any.
me, maybe driving automatic would have been easier than learning because I do have, I do actually have I used to have a license, a driving license, but it was only valid for 10 years and then it expired in 2013, I think. So I don't have that anymore and I've never missed it. But imagine, so for example, let's take cycling. In my hometown of Warsaw, Poland, um, I did have a bike, but I never used it because it was hard to get to it. Like we didn't have space for it at home, and there weren't many cycling paths, so I never cycled there, or very rarely. In the Netherlands, I have a bike in my, in my shed, and there are cycling paths everywhere, and they just built a new cycling route that's it's right next to our house. It's passing by our house, so I can actually I learned to drive to cycle here, or maybe I didn't learn. I could do it more or less, but I became better at it enough to go cycling with my family, for example, which is something. So I guess if the environment supports it and makes it easier, right? Because driving,
Mhm.
driving in European cities, it's probably a nightmare. Like I didn't even do my exam in Warsaw because it's so big and scary, and also everyone drives and there are traffic jams everywhere. I went to this tiny city in the east of Poland to do my exam, but my point is if the environment supports it. So for example, my cycling, the environment supports me cycling. There are cycling paths everywhere. I can go places with my bike and it's actually nice. It feels good for me, which is also important. So I cycle. If in back in Warsaw, I didn't cycle so much. It was just so much more of an effort.
Right. And do you
So
face
if the
like
environment supports.
is that absolutely true that having that kind of environment to help um, is very beneficial? Where I live, there's not really much in public transportation. Whereas a place like maybe New York City or something, a place like that, I would probably benefit a lot from not having a car. But here in
Yeah.
Texas, you pretty much have to drive because there's so much open land and space, everything's so spaced out because there's so much area here um, that nothing,
Yeah.
things don't have to be zoned in. Uh, so it's I pretty much have to rely on people for rides unless something is within walking distance, which most things are. Like I couldn't work certain times at work because I rely on my father to give me rides. Um,
Mm.
I don't know how that's relevant to this conversation, uh, but I don't know. But yeah, definitely having that environment. Do you find difficulties in cycling and riding your bike? Because I always did. I never could ride a bike. Um,
Mm. Yeah, at the beginning I did. I found it very weird, but uh, it was really interesting because the Netherlands is a country where, there's a person, there's a bike for them. You wouldn't imagine the things they have as bikes. And so my issue was that I'm not very tall, and sitting so high up was a bit scary, especially if I couldn't reach the ground with my feet. So I went to the store and said, and the guy is showing me this bike, and I go, no, I'm not getting on that. And at some point he said, oh, you know what, we have such special bikes with where the seat is lower, like it's a regular size bike, only the seat is lower, and it's just perfect, and I'm not afraid. I just cycle. It's great actually. So I guess it's about, I do believe in having the right equipment. We can do a lot of stuff if we have the right equipment. I cook a lot. I'm not a bad cook at all, and I cook, you know, fresh meals for my family almost every day. And a lot of it I found is just having the right, not gadget, but having the right things to help you. Like, you know, a knife that you can hold easily, that's not too heavy or not too something, that's just you can just use and not worry about it. Or I found a rice cooker, made my life so much easier. And there are other things in the kitchen, and there's some meals that are really dyspraxic friendly. I think.
Such as?
Well, so for example, I found soups and stews are really I tend to be easy because they basically make themselves, especially stew.
Mm-hmm.
You put, you know, meat and vegetable into a pot, and then you let it stew for 2 hours or so, and you don't have to. The only thing you have to do is to cut the vegetables and cut the meat, and or you can buy pre-cut vegetables, by the way, and meat too. So sometimes you don't even have to cut it, and you just have to kind of add it all into a pot and maybe fry some onions and have some, you know, tomato sauce or something, and then you let it stew for 2 hours and add some spices, and you know, you have stew. So that's a dish that pretty much makes itself.
Right.
Or
like ramen noodles.
If you can reduce
there we
ramen
go.
noodles, perfect.
That's pretty much the extent of what I can make.
No, I was a bit lucky, because very lucky actually, because my father cooks. He's an amazing cook, and he taught me. So most of the things I do, I got from him, and you know, he taught me techniques, and I helped him cook sometimes, and that's how I learned all those stuff, because at some point I managed to repeat the movements enough times so I could do them myself. And when I met my husband, it was either learn to cook or eat frozen pizza for the rest of my days. So I taught myself to cook more.
Well, I guess necessity is kind of, they say necessity is the mother of invention, but necessity is also a great motivator to get you to do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. It's like, well, it's either learn how to cook or get used to eating the same old stuff, frozen pizzas.
Yeah, nothing against, you know, frozen pizza. I just like mixing stuff up. So we would do, you know, something with rice one day and pasta the other day, and then, you know, I just like mixing things up, food wise at least.
Yeah.
I'm not that adventurous in other areas, but food, I eat everything almost. But yeah, so we talked about that article, and you said he kind of wanted to ask how it kind of, how I found out about having dyspraxia, because I'm not diagnosed in any way, but I think
neither am I. So that's perfectly. A lot of people aren't, especially like you and I are both outside of the UK. And I don't know, like, as far as awareness over in the Netherlands or in Poland. But as I've mentioned, in America, there's virtually no awareness, which is one of the reasons I do what I do. Is even though it does seem fruitless at times, but I at least try to do something to kind of show like the American perspective of it. So being from the UK, I think, or being outside the UK, we're both like probably less likely to actually find an unofficial diagnosis. But I should let you talk.
Yeah. No, so I think you kind of always know, or at least, I mean, I didn't know it was called dyspraxia, but I knew it was something. So for example, I attended ballroom dancing class when I was a student, and the teacher told us, you know, make a turn, and everyone would make a turn and end up on, you know, the right, with their weight or on the right foot, and then I would make a turn and end up on a totally different foot, and I just couldn't know what had happened. And the teacher would kind of he would have to show me several times, break out the movement into tiny little steps, and I learned it that way, but it just took me so much longer. Or I would get lost everywhere, even in areas I knew well. I would get lost.
Mm-hmm. I totally understand that. I mean, I've being in theater, I've had to do things where I've had to attempt to dance, and so I know all about how difficult that could be. And it's not like real invasive dancing, but it's having to learn how to tango or having to learn how to waltz. Um, it's frustrating for the director. It's frustrating for your scene partner, and most of all yourself. Um, but it's amazing how we attempt to do things, and as difficult as it is, we find a way to do it, even if it looks awkward or is hard. A lot of times, dyspraxics are not always unable to do things. We have
No, we just
have greater difficulty
we just
doing it.
yeah, and we do things our ways. So, for example, I watch quite a lot of cooking videos, and the chefs, they demonstrate the proper way to cut onions, for example, and I do it differently. I don't do it their way, and it's just easier for me this way, and the onions still get cut. So that's the point.
Exactly. It's like when I learned how to type, they taught us you have to rest your fingers on, certain keys, and you had to do it a certain way. And I would always two finger type everything. And people always say, "Oh, that's not the proper way to do
Yeah,
it." And it's like, but that's how, I mean, it's still, if I tried to do it the other way, I would make far more typos and I'd be a lot slower. So doing it my way, it's like,
exactly.
what does it hurt, I mean, I'm still typing, I'm still keeping up. And just as an example of my current job, um, we usually have to push our carts like down aisles and stuff, and they want us to go down the aisles so that we can get and oftentimes I don't push my car. I'll just drag it behind me. That's easier for me. And a lot of times I don't even take it down the aisle. I'll just stop it right outside the aisle, and then I'll just go back and forth, back and forth. And I'm very fast. So like, I have a lot of speed, so I can go back and forth like real quickly, more and I get the job done faster than if I were to try and move it through a crowded aisle. So we always find the way that we do things may not always be the quote unquote correct way or the proper way, but we find our own methods to cut, it might be cutting corners, but we still get the job done.
Yeah, and we can teach us. I think we're so, at least I am very persistent if I want to be. And, I've taught myself so much. I've taught myself how to play the guitar and the ukulele, and I've taught
Wow.
myself how to write, because you know, I write, like, English is my third language. And I speak two more. I speak two more after that. So 5 in total. And
Oh, wow.
my writing career started because I was a new mom for the second time, and I was lonely and a little bit bored, and I thought a blog would be a cool thing to kind of share my thoughts on stuff. And that blog turned into writing, guest posting, that turned into article writing, and freelance writing that turned into book writing. So I've taught myself all that. I never studied journalism. I never learned any writing. I just kind of taught myself by doing it, basically.
That's incredible. I mean, this is why I enjoy doing what I do with this podcast, and why I'd like to do it more, is I like meeting other dyspraxics and hearing their stories and hearing them talk about the things that they've overcame and the things that they're able to do. I mean, you've been able to do things that a lot of neurotypical people haven't been able to do. I mean, learning 5 languages. I can barely master one. You know, and learning how to, teaching yourself how to play the guitar, that's hard for a dyspraxic to do, to learn an instrument, especially one that requires so much dexterity, like the guitar and the ukulele. Um, so kudos to you for being able to do all that yourself, while also trying to maintain,
Thank you.
a household and children and writing career. Um, so I want to
Yeah,
ask
no, that
you.
was the
Oh,
guitar was, yeah. No, the guitar was, I think when I was 14, I taught myself to play the guitar when I was 14. So that was a while ago.
have you ever tried to do anything like write a song or something like that, or is it just a hobby of yours?
No, I mean, I'm not so good at it. I can barely accompany myself when I sing or something. I don't have a big voice. I can't sing a bit. Like I don't sound terrible, or sometimes I don't sound terrible. So when I want to sing or something, or there's a new song that I like, so I can learn it to play, how to play it. And it's funny because I can do chords. Like when I see C, A, F, G, I can do that. But if you send me the tabs for a song, nope. I cannot read sheet music either. Like I took
Oh
piano
no.
lessons because I wanted to teach myself I wanted to learn how to play the piano. And I had a teacher who would, put like a piece of sheet music in front of me and say, play that, and like, no. And then I would ask him to play it for me, and he would play it, and then I would play it because I could learn like the is I would teach myself the right hand side, like the right to play the right hand, and then play the left hand, and then play all that together. But I had to learn both melodies by heart for every song.
I see. So it isn't,
So
yeah, it's
instead of,
something that takes a lot of practice.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, naturally, but obviously more so. Well, that's incredible, you know. You should try and record something, play a song, sing a song, one that you like, you know how to play. Um, so what's next for Olga? Do you have any other kind of writing? When did your book come out? And are you going to write a follow-up? Are you going to write something else, or do you have any other projects in the work?
So in the Netherlands, Nixon came out because it came out in the Netherlands first, and actually in two languages. So it was simultaneously, it came out in both in Dutch and English, which was pretty cool because it had like complementary covers, and one was, orange with a yellow dot and a white dot, and the other one was white with a orange dot. So it looked really cool. And it actually came out March 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. Like, no, not in the middle, but actually it came out a week after the first lockdown. So I was very worried that people wouldn't be able to go to the bookstore and buy it. And
Right.
then the North American edition came out, actually almost exactly a year ago. I think January 2021.
Well, anytime you're looking for someone to do the audiobook, I'm right here. Um, keep that in mind. But do you have any other project, anything that you're writing? I will have links in the description to where you can purchase the book. And obviously, I haven't read it, but I'll have to. I'll have to see what it's all about, because it's a subject that's close to my heart. Doing nothing. I'm very passionate about that. So what's funny, just one little thing. I had a friend who's from Belgium, and I actually learned not from them, but I did learn a Dutch word that I used to tease them on a lot. And you'll know what this means. I won't translate it though. It's the word is tepels.
Oh. Really? Is that what
Tepels.
that's what you learned?
I learned, yeah, of all the words I've learned tepels. So
That's hilarious.
there we go. Um,
So now you also know Niksen.
Niksen, yes, there's the second one. Taples and Niksen.
Yeah, and then the really cool thing about Dutch, the Dutch language is that you can use the word lekker, which means delicious, for everything. So they would say lekker warm, deliciously warm, and lekker slapen, to sleep deliciously. And they also say lekker niksen, to do nothing deliciously.
Well, you can't go wrong with liquor. So, uh,
Oh yeah, it
um,
sounds like liquor. Yeah, it's like lekker, but yeah,
liqueur,
it means
liqueur.
delicious. Lekker.
This liquor is liqueur, liqueur. I'm terrible at pronouncing like foreign words, unless it's like Japanese or something. But like, yeah, like foreign words, like French or Dutch. Um, I also learned from my Belgian friend, that they invented French fries. It's not from France. It's from Belgium,
Yeah,
and they eat it
yeah,
with mayonnaise.
yeah. Mayonnaise, of course. How else? Like,
I never did. Obviously we do in America we usually do it with
and
ketchup,
ketchup.
and
I know.
people think it's
No, that's
weird to
no.
eat it with mayonnaise. But that's what I do now. Like I was like, well, I'll try it, and now it's like I feel like I can't eat French fries unless it's dipped in mayonnaise. Of course, they use a different
Right,
kind of mayonnaise, but still, like
right.
I go to McDonald's and I'm like, I would like, with my French fries, I'd like a side of mayonnaise. Okay, but customer's always right.
Funny.
Uh, but anyway,
No,
all interesting.
and
Um,
the Belgians also eat mussels, which actually come from Zealand in the Netherlands.
they eat mussels, like like
Mus
beef mussels.
like yeah, like clams and mussels and oysters.
Oh, I see. I recently saw a
Seafood,
video
yeah. So they
from a British food. It was jellied eels they used to eat. I don't think it's as popular anymore, but like back in the Victorian era, that was like something that was like one of the most common food was jellied eels,
oh
which curious. It's a curious kind of idea. Um, So, I don't remember if you answered the question, but like the other projects, anything else writing wise or anything else that you're working on or focusing on in the future. Do you have
so
any advice
I
for people who thought about writing a book or publishing one?
oh yeah, but obviously that would depend on where they are, if they're just starting out or if they have an idea or um but yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about practice, and so just try and see what happens. It's always good to learn about the art of writing, but mostly it's practice and working with people like editors or beta readers or friends who would, because I don't think I would have continued with my blog if I didn't if I had if I didn't get if I didn't get so positive messages about it. And
Mhm.
people would comment on it, say, oh, this is a great post, or a friend would tell me, oh, you're so good at it, and that kind of helped me continue. So it's very important to have that kind of support. As for me, there is so much I want to do at this point. I don't think there will be a follow-up or a sequel to Nixon. I want to write a parenting book, and I'm teaching myself to write fiction, and I'm teaching myself to write memoirs. So I don't know which one of those things will happen first, if at all, but that's the plan for now.
So you just got so many irons in the fire. I'm sure one of them will come up. I mean, you are already a published author, so you have that going for you to, you know, get your other works in the process. But obviously, at the moment, I am writing a memoir as well, and still a work in progress. You know, I haven't even thought about how I'm going to go about publishing it. I mean, I have talked to a publisher um, who is working with a collection of poems that I wrote, and they're in the process of publishing that. But so that's something that I kind of relate to a little bit is the process of writing. Of course, I haven't worked with an editor. I've just mainly been editing myself. But maybe when I'm ready to try and publish it, I'll reach out and try to seek some advice, on that
Of
end.
course.
Um,
Of course. And also what I want to say, like if you're writing fiction, and for example, there's some genres like fantasy or romance, actually a lot in romance, where you see characters who are they're um, gender non-binary, they're black, they're people of color, they're gay, they're lesbian, they're Asian, they're autistic, but I haven't found a book yet with characters who are dyspraxic. And I think
right.
that's a shame. And I think one way to bring more awareness into that is to just write books with dyspraxic characters, and
There's a lot of interesting
show their
things
struggles, but
to
also
yeah, there's a lot of interesting characteristics to being a dyspraxic that would make for interesting fiction. Well, even if that's not the focus and that's just the characteristics of, the what that character is, there's a lot of ways that could make for good stories. So that is an excellent idea.
exactly. Thank you.
Um, Before we go, I always ask, do you have any parting words, anything you would like to tell, you know, the audience, or if there is an audience, um, or and just anything else that you would like to say before we go?
No, I think I just said it.
Just said it all.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I certainly hope that you enjoyed your time on here. I certainly enjoyed speaking to you. Hopefully, I didn't interrupt you too many times.
No, you did not.
But and in the future, when you do have another project or something else that you would like to promote, or just come back on and have a chat, uh, I would be happy to have you on again.
Thank you so much. And it was such a pleasure to talk to you. It was really nice.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate it. And the links to both articles and to Olga's book, uh, Niksen, The Art of Doing Nothing, um, will be in the description for anyone who would like to buy it. I will look into trying to buy a copy myself because I'm interested in reading about nothing. Uh, and yeah, that's all there really is left to say. Thank you so much, and shine
Thank you.
on, Dyspraxic.
Thank you so much.